Next installment in my video lecture series in economics. And in this particular video lecture, I'm going to be taking a look at the effect of welfare programs on labor supply. This is in my public finance class, and it relates to the section on analytical issues in chapter 15. So one of the things that we should take a look at is here's our original budget constraint, and why is it upward sloping compared to downward sloping when we looked at utility maximization. So I'm going to give you a little bit of time to think about why this is upward sloping right now versus downward sloping when we were looking at utility maximization. The reason being is that there's a positive relationship between work and consumption. The more you work, the more you get paid. The more you get paid, the more you can consume. So that is why it's upward sloping in this particular example, because we're looking at the trade-off between work and consumption. So make sure you're comfortable with that. That's a main issue that students have had in the past. They see budget constraint, they automatically think from the utility maximization section that it's going to be downward sloping. Since we're looking at the trade-off between work and consumption, the budget constraint is upward sloping. The more you work, the more income you have, the more consumption that you can engage in. So make sure you're comfortable with that little bit of difference. So let's take a look at what happens to this budget constraint if we give people, all people, a 100-hour a week subsidy. Let's say that there's some program that will give everybody $100 a week. How is this going to impact the original budget constraint? Well, if we're at point B and we're not working, we have no income, we can't consume. But if we get that $100 a week subsidy, we can consume 100 units, $100 worth of consumption, correct? So point B gets shifted upward by 100 units. Since there is no benefit reduction, we keep that $100 regardless of how much we work. If we work 5, 10, 15, 20, 30, 40, whatever hours, we still get to keep that $100 benefit. So regardless of the amount of hours we work in a week, our consumption is shifted upward by 100 units. So if we give people a subsidy of $100 per week and allow them to consume that in any way they want, and we do not reduce their benefits based upon how much they're working or how much their income is, the budget constraint shifts up, and the vertical distance between the new budget constraint and the original budget constraint is the amount of that particular subsidy. So we have a parallel shifting of the new budget constraint, reflecting that additional $100 that does not get reduced with the amount of work or the amount of income that we have. How is this going to look is if we have a $100 per week subsidy and there's a 100% benefit reduction. That is, for every dollar I earn from working, I lose $1 in benefits. So let's say the hourly rate is $10 per hour, and I work an hour, I'm going to earn an extra $10, but my benefit's going to be cut by $10. If I work 2 hours, I make $20, my benefit's cut by $20. So if we aren't working, we shift upwards from point B, $100. We're not working, we have no income, so we can't consume anything. We get our $100 a week subsidy, we can consume $100 worth of stuff during that week. But for every hour I work, I get my benefits reduced 100%. Every dollar I earn my subsidy is reduced by that. So we have a horizontal line until we hit the original budget constraint. Because we're increasing our work, we're not working here at point B, we've got $100. And for every hour that we work, or every hour we work and how much income we're getting, our benefit gets reduced by the same amount. So the amount of money that we have available to consume something in consumption remains constant. So I'm increasing my work, but I get no additional income in order to consume. That's why the line is horizontal. It remains horizontal until it hits the original budget constraint, because at that point I've worked enough that I've had my $100 a week benefit reduced to zero. Now if I work, I will get additional income from the hours that I work. So you end up with this distortion of the budget constraint. It shifts upward when hours of work is equal to zero and the amount equal to the subsidy. For every hour I work above zero, all right, in this region here, my consumption doesn't go up because all the money I earn from working gets taken away from me, taken away from that weekly subsidy until the subsidy is gone. So we've worked enough to get to point D. So now the subsidy that we were getting that was $100, we've worked enough that the subsidy is equal to zero. And after that point, for the hours worked after that, my income is going to increase and I'm going to be able to consume. So realize that how the benefit is structured impacts what the budget constraint looks like. And I also want to give you a comparison between these two extremes. Here, we have no benefit reduction. What happens? The new budget constraint shifts upward and is parallel, has the same slope as the original budget constraint. If I get a subsidy and there's 100% benefit reduction, i.e. for every dollar I earn working, a dollar is taken away from the subsidy, it's horizontal until I work enough that the subsidy is equal to zero, and then it is equal to the original budget constraint. So if you have a subsidy where it's reduced dollar per dollar based upon how much you're working, you have a horizontal line. And if you have a subsidy with no benefit reduction, it shifts upward and the slope is equal to the original budget constraint. So if I have 100% benefit reduction, the slope of that part of the budget constraint that's operational is going to be zero. And if I have no benefit reduction, the slope of the new budget constraint is equal to the slope of the original budget constraint. Therefore, if I put a percentage reduction in benefits, like 50%, so if I earn $1 working, my benefits get reduced by 50%, that slope is going to fall between zero and the slope of the original budget constraint. So I want you to be aware of that if we have a situation where there's a percentage benefit reduction less than 100 but greater than zero, the slope of the new budget constraint is going to fall in between zero and the slope of the original budget constraint until we erode the entire benefit. We work enough to get rid of the benefit. So let's take a look at that particular scenario right here. So we're going to take some percentage. It's going to be between 0 and 100%. If it's 100%, the new budget constraint would be horizontal until we get to the point where we've eroded our entire weekly subsidy. So here is the situation. Here we have an individual has an original budget constraint. There's their indifference curve, and where that indifference curve is tangent to the budget constraint, that indicates the utility maximizing level of work that the individual will engage in and the amount of consumption associated with that level of work. If they get a subsidy, the budget constraint will look like this when there's a percentage reduction in benefits somewhere between 0 and 100%. So the level of the subsidy is the difference between B and where the budget constraint intersects the y-axis. So this vertical distance here is the amount of the subsidy. And now we're subtracting a portion, 50%, 40%, 60%. So you get a line that starts with the amount of subsidy and is sloped less than the original budget constraint. It gets to the point where it intersects the new budget constraint, the original budget constraint, and the new budget constraint and the original budget constraint are equal to one another at this point. That's the point where you've worked enough that you've eliminated your subsidy 100%. What does that do to the utility maximizing situation for the person? Well, we need to go to where the indifference curve in the indifference map is just tangent to the new budget constraint, which is that point right there. And you can see that by structuring the program this way, we've incentivized the person to work less, so they're working less. They're working 50% less, but they're actually consuming more. So this is a beneficial situation. If you consume more and work less, you're better off. So that is the argument against the way welfare programs were structured in the United States. They were structured to disincentivize work. All right. The old stereotype was, people on welfare or they're lazy, blah, blah, blah. You would hear these different complaints from people. But the thing is, they were just maximizing their utility based upon the constraints that were placed, the new budget constraint that was placed upon them by the structure of the program. And the structure of the program incentivized people to work less. So realize that this, I think, is a very important aspect of economic analysis, where you can analyze public programs and see from the this perspective of economic theory, what is the prediction? The prediction is that people are going to work less under this structure of a program. All right, that if you set the system up in this fashion, that if you give people a weekly subsidy and you take a percentage of it away, they're going to work less, because by working less, they can actually consume more. So it wasn't that individuals on welfare were lazy. It's just that the way the programs were structured incentivized people to work less. So hopefully this illustrates a point where economic analysis can be very, very useful, and particularly analyzing the structure of public benefit programs, in particular taking a look at, does it incentivize or disincentivize work? So hopefully this was helpful in illustrating that to you.